السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله، الحمد لله، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. I welcome everyone to our second class studying Hanbali fiqh. As we all know, we're studying Umdat At-Talib by Al-Imam Al-Buhuti, Sheikh Mansour ibn Yunus Al-Buhuti, rahimahullah ta'ala. The acts of worship. We began last week the beginning of the book and the introduction to Kitab At-Tahara and the book of purity and the chapter on regarding the rules of water, Ahkamul Miyah. Inshallah, today we will continue and hopefully finish this chapter, and then we will stop for questions, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Please try to keep up with the quizzes and the class notes, and if you have any questions pertaining to the material that we have studied, and only to the material that we have studied, then please do ask it in class, or if you do not get a chance to ask it in class, please email it. Just as a reminder, I tend to not reply to Telegram messages. Just send to the email address of the class, and inshallah it will be logged, and either I'll be able to respond to it personally or bring it up in the next class, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Just as a reminder, for to be able to control the chat, we don't want to flood the chat with salams and jazakallah khairan and all these things. These are all appreciated, are important, but so that we can focus on the questions that students have, we will focus on the chat. However, I will ask right now, just for a few students only, a few students, not everyone, to let me know if the volume of the audio is clear and there's no disturbing background noise before we begin. Just a few students, not everybody. Is the voice clear and loud? Just type yes or no. It's fine. Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, that's good enough. We're good, inshallah, to start. Okay, so it's very important to try to review very well for the class after taking the class, to read the notes and to take the quiz and to see if you have any questions regarding it, because it's a lot of information and it just needs practice and review and focus. The author, rahimahullah ta'ala, begins his book with the rules of water, the book of purification and the rules of water. And we mentioned the first category, which is tahur, which is purifying water, and we mentioned that which is not disliked, not makruh, and that which is disliked. Now the question came up last time, and there was a very brief answer to it, but we want to go into it in detail because it's important to know, and because this is something that you will rarely find spelled out in the books. When we say that water is tahur but disliked, what is it disliked for? Because we have wudu, we have ghusl or showering, we have removing an impurity or a najasa, and we have eating and drinking and other usages. The principles of the madhab indicate that the answer to this is based on the reasoning for the water being disliked. Why did the Hanabila consider it disliked? And you'll be able to know what it's disliked for. In general, the Hanabila will say it's disliked, but to know why, what is disliked for, you need to know why they disliked it. So let's take a look at the examples we studied. Number one, that which is extremely hot or cold would be disliked to use for wudu or ghusl only, because the reason such water is disliked is because it prevents one from performing wudu and ghusl properly. It would not be disliked to use it for removing an impurity on one's garment, for example. A person might decide to pour boiling water on a shirt he's not wearing to cleanse it from urine, for example, or to wash his shirt in ice cold water, or to wash himself a najasa that came onto him with very cold water, because this will not affect the wudu or the ghusl, which was the reason that this extremely hot or cold water was disliked. Obviously, a person should not harm themselves and avoid harming themselves with anything directly on their body. But the point the Hanabila were making was not using this water for wudu and ghusl because uh, it might prevent somebody from performing wudu and ghusl properly. The second is water that has been heated by something impure. It would be disliked to use this in all cases, meaning removing hadath, a ritual impurity for wudu or ghusl, cleaning physical impurities, drinking, putting it in your food, and so on. Why? Either because igniting a fire from something impure is disliked, and anything resulting from that is disliked. That's one reason they mention. Or because the cause of it being disliked is that there's a chance that the smoke of the impurity came into the water, so it was left to be on the safe side. So obviously, if you want to leave something najis, you're not allowed to use something najis in general, except for emergency, because this might be najis. We're leaving it just to be on the safe side in all cases, as long as a person has other options, obviously. Now, water, the third one is water that has changed due to insoluble pure materials changing it, like camphor pieces or sea salt. This is disliked because the scholars differed whether this affects the water's purifying ability, meaning is it still tahur, or is it only tahir and not tahur? Can we use it for wudu or not? Since the scholars differed, that's why the Hanafi said it's best to avoid. Here it would be disliked to use this water for removing hadath, meaning for wudu and ghusl, or for in general for wudu and ghusl, and for cleaning physical impurities. Why? Since the Hanabila require physical impurities to be removed by tahur water, and Allah knows best. So if you have a choice between this type of water and water that has not changed, which is tahur without a doubt, then it's better to use that for either wudu or ghusl or for the removal of the najasa. There are other examples of disliked water, tahur disliked water that the Hanabi mentioned in the longer books, but we will not mention them here. Just as a reminder, any of okay, let's see if we can lower that real quick. Okay, I apologize about that. There's an issue with the laptop. Allah musta'an. So, Bismillah, we will continue, inshallah, from where we left off. So, basically, why is water disliked, or when is it disliked to use? What is it disliked for? It's based on the reason it was disliked. The next issue, the third type of tahur water. The author rahimahullah says, وَإِنْ خَلَتْ مُكَلَّفَةٌ بِيَسِيرٍ لِطَهَارَةٍ كَامِلَةٍ عَنْ حَدَثٍ لَمْ يَرْفَعْ حَدَثَ رَجُلٍ. If a woman of legal capacity, meaning she's a sane adult, secludes herself for complete purification from ritual impurity with a small amount of water, it will not remove the ritual impurity of a man. There's a lot of things going on here. Let's take a look at it one thing at a time. A woman, and not a man, of legal capacity, meaning she's mukallaf, she's a sane adult, not a young girl and not an insane woman. This is a woman who's Islamically has legal capacity, or Allah can command her and she must obey Allah's command. Secludes herself, meaning she's no one who's 7 years or older is present with her. There's khalwa, she's by herself. No one who's 7 years old or older is present with her. She's by herself for a complete purification, not a partial purification, not an incomplete tahara, but a full, complete purification. And this purification is from hadath, not a recommended purification like the ghusl for Jum'ah, for example, or renewing the wudu, or a purification from a physical impurity, removing najasa. No, it's from a purification from hadath. With a small amount of water. She has a bucket of water that's less than 2 qullas, which is not a large amount. And it's not dirt for tayammum, it's a small amount of water. If she performs a complete wudu or ghusl to remove hadath with this water, and nobody sees her who's 7 years old or above, or no one's with her who's 7 years old or above, then a man cannot use this to remove his hadath, or he cannot use it for wudu and ghusl in general. It will not remove this ritual impurity of a man, as opposed to the physical impurity. He can use it for removal of najasa. Of an adult man, as opposed to a child, or somebody, a male who's not an adult, or a female, they're allowed to use this without an issue. Note, this water is considered tahur water. Why? Because it removes hadath for that woman, for other females and non-adult men. But it only prevents the removal of a man's hadath. And a man can use it to remove najasa, but he cannot use it to remove hadath. He cannot use it for wudu or ghusl. This is from the Mufradat, a unique opinion of the Hanabila. Again, let's repeat it. A woman who's an adult and she's sane, she goes into the bathroom with a bucket of water that's less than 2 qullas. A bucket usually is less than 2 qullas. She scoops out of it and performs a complete wudu to remove her hadath, because she just woke up and she wants to pray, for example. Or she washes herself from either after her period finishes because she wants to pray, or she's in a state of sexual impurity and she wants to pray. This is a removal of hadath. She uses that water and washes, either makes wudu or ghusl. We're talking about the water that's in the bucket, not the water that's coming off of her body, the water that remains in the bucket. This is what the Hanabila are talking about. So if she finishes an entire wudu or ghusl to remove hadath, and there's no 7-year-old or anyone older present with her, or in that area who can see her, or who can even present with her, even if it's a blind person, that water, that bucket of water, can no longer be used by who? By a man, an adult man, in for the sake of wudu or ghusl. So a woman can use it A young child can use it. A man can use it for removal of najasa. So basically all the conditions we mentioned here must apply for this water to be unusable by a man for wudu or ghusl. And this is only the Hanabila say this. The majority of scholars say this water is tahur. There's no issue with it, and it's the second report from Imam Ahmad. Now, why do the Hanabila say this? And if you have questions regarding this, record it inshallah, and we'll take it at the end of the class bi'idhnillah. They say this is something that is mentioned in the hadith. عن الحكم بن عمرو الغفاري رضي الله عنه نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يتوضأ الرجل بفضل طهور المرأة. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم prohibited using forbade using the leftover water of a woman's purification. Is reported by the five, meaning Abu Dawud, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, and Imam Ahmad. Some mention the remainder of her purification or of her wudu water. It's graded Hasan by Tirmidhi, Sahih by Ibn Habban, and Imam Ahmad used it as proof in one of his reports. Imam Ahmad said that several of the companions held this view. From them is Abdullah ibn Amr and Abdullah ibn Sarjis. Abdullah ibn Sarjis, one of the companions, said, you make wudu, he's talking to a man here, and let her make it there, but if she's alone with it, then don't come near it. Meaning they can be in the same area or they can be making it from the same container. But if she's alone with that water, then don't come near it, meaning for purification. The reason for this, they said, is ta'abbudi. It's an act of worship. It's a ritual, and we cannot comprehend its reasoning or its wisdom. So it's one of those things that we do not understand. This is what the Hanabila, this is the ruling according to the Hanabila based on this hadith and based on several companions also following this hadith, and they said we don't know why. That's why we stick only to the hadith. Anyone who has questions, please save them until the end of class. Do not send them in the chat box now so that we can make sure that we don't miss anything. So that's the third type of tahur water. Non-disliked water, disliked tahur water, and this special water that a woman was alone with and she performed wudu or a complete wudu or ghusl to remove a complete hadith. So now let's take a look at the categories of tahur water. We took three and there's only one left. That number one is that which is not disliked, and that's the default. The second is that which is disliked, such as freezing cold or hot water, changes due to salt that comes from water, like sea salt, and heating water with something impure, or change due to camphor pieces or things that don't dissolve in water. The third type is a small amount of water that a woman secludes herself with. Oh yeah, it's a small amount, it can't be a large amount. Now the fourth is prohibited water, which is not mentioned by the author, but we'll mention it due to its importance for the Hanabila. Such as stolen water or water taken forcefully. Somebody goes to the store and steals 20 liters of water. It is not valid to use that water for wudu or ghusl. And it will remove, however, it will remove physical impurities. For example, urine from clothes. If somebody washes it with stolen water, we'll say that the garment is clean, but one would be sinful for using it because it's not theirs and they don't have right. They have to either purchase it or take it with permission and so forth. And this is also from the Mufradat, a unique opinion of the Hanbalis. Why? Because the Hanbalis have a rule that if the prohibition is related to a pillar or a condition for an act of worship, that would lead to the invalidity of the act of worship. So, for example, water is a pillar of wudu. You cannot make wudu without water. If that water is stolen, it's prohibited, then one of your pillars is prohibited, therefore the act of worship is prohibited. Another example they gave is in prayer. A condition of the prayer is to cover your awra, cover a certain part of your body that must be covered in prayer. So for example, if a man has a thobe that's made out of silk or it's a stolen thobe and he covers his awra with it in prayer, they'll say that prayer is invalid. Only the Hanabila say this because one of the conditions of the prayer was invalid. The other scholars would say, no, it's two separate things. They'll be sinful for that, but the act of worship would be valid. However, if it's not related to a condition or a pillar, for example, something completely different, as we'll see with a stolen container of water, then they would not invalidate the wudu. Likewise, if a person wore a gold ring, a man wore a gold ring during the prayer, or a silk hat, for example, which is not necessary for the prayer, it's not a condition or a pillar, then they would say he'd be sinful, but the act of worship is valid. So these are the four types of tahur water that the Hanabila mentioned. So we finished with tahur water. Now we'll move to the second category, tahir water, which you can use for, you cannot use for purification. You cannot use it for wudu or ghusl, showering, for a ritual shower, or for removing najasa, according to the famous opinion of the Hanabila. However, it's clean. It's not najis. So the author says, الثاني طاهر وهو ما تغير كثير من لونه أو طعمه أو ريحه بطاهر غير ما مر. The second type of water is tahir. It is that which has greatly changed in color or significantly changed in color, taste, or smell with something pure besides what has preceded. So, for example, something foreign to the water, for example, lemons, tea, coffee, meat, and so forth. That's what's being mixed here. Except for, and it significantly changes the water. Exceptions, he said, he makes an exception besides what has preceded. Exceptions that were previously mentioned are what? Salt that comes from water, such as sea salt and dirt. We mentioned those are as exceptions. Pure materials which are insoluble in water, such as tree leaves, for example, such as camphor pieces or oud pieces. These would be an exception to the rule. So it has to be something foreign and not from the things that we mentioned before. No, if one was to intentionally place tree leaves or algae, for example, and similar things that naturally change the water into the water, it would be treated like a foreign element. For example, it's like squeezing lemons or placing coffee, mixing coffee into this water. So when is algae forgiven and when is tree leaves forgiven that change the water? If it happens naturally, something that you can't stop. But if you gather algae and mix it into your cup of water or into your tub of water, that's a different story. If it changes significantly, it would be tahir. So notice here he says that it changes significantly. Now there are three levels of change when you mix something pure into water. There's a slight change. Level one is a slight change. This does not affect the water's purifying status. It's still tahur. The second is a major change that doesn't change the water's name. For example, it's lemony water or it's saffron water and so on. It's still water but mixed. There's a major difference of opinion in the madhab regarding this, and the relied upon opinion is that it is tahir and not tahur. It is tahir and not tahur. You cannot use it for wudu or ghusl or removal of najasa. The third is a major change that causes the water to no longer be called water. Rather, it's called something else. It becomes chicken broth, coffee, orange juice, and so on. This is tahir, but it's not water. So it's tahir coffee, it's tahir orange juice, and so forth, or chicken broth. So let's take a look at some pictures. If you look at the left, you have a tiny slice of lemon in that water, in that cold water. It might slightly change the taste. It does not change the color too much. It does not, probably won't change the smell too much. It's a very slight change. Something like that would not make the water tahir. It would still be tahur and valid for wudu. The second type, if you look at the second picture, there's a lot of lemons in there that have been squeezed, and it made the color significantly change, and probably the taste also significantly change. and perhaps the smell also is very citric, that would, but it's still water. It's lemony, very strong lemony water. And perhaps if you add more and more, it would be more closer to the lemons than the water. However, okay, so that is what there's a strong difference of opinion regarding. That would be not allowed to use for wudu or ghusl because there's a significant change. And the last one, we have chicken broth or some sort of soup. That's tahir soup, but it's definitely not water anymore. It's not even called water anymore. The second type of tahir water, he says, أو رفع بقليله حدث, a small amount of water which has removed a ritual impurity, meaning water less than 2 qullas, which gathers from the first wash from an obligatory purification, an obligatory wudu or obligatory ghusl, shower, or washing a deceased Muslim, for example, which is obligatory. So here we have a man washing his face for wudu, for example. Let's say he only washes it one time because we want the obligatory wash. That's the one that removes hadath. The second and third one are recommended. They don't remove hadath, they're just recommended. You get reward for it. What removes the hadath is the first wash. So this man, he gathers that first wash into a bucket underneath him, for example. That water is used to remove hadath, or it's used for an obligatory ritual purification, such as an obligatory wudu or ghusl, or washing a deceased Muslim. If it's a small amount, less than 2 qullas, like a bucket of water, this removes the hadath. Okay, so this would be tahir and not tahur. A person cannot reuse that for wudu, ghusl, or for removal of a najasa or an impurity. So it removes the hadath. The Hanabi also mentioned that the person who uses this water for wudu or ghusl and so forth has to be someone of legal capacity, such as a sane adult, or a child who's 7 years or older. So a child is allowed to make wudu, and they're allowed to pray if they're 7 years old, because that's when their prayer and their wudu is valid. So if a child who's 7 years or older gathers this water, or an adult gathers this water, then that water cannot be used again, with these conditions: that it's a small amount, 2, that it's used for an obligatory wudu or ghusl, or washing a deceased Muslim, which is obligatory, and 3, the person who's performing this is either a sane adult or a 7-year-old who's performing wudu or ghusl. So if it was a large amount of water, it wouldn't be an issue. If it was a recommended wudu or ghusl, it wouldn't be an issue. Why do they say this? The Prophet ﷺ said, لا يغتسل أحدكم في الماء الدائم وهو جنب. أخرجه Muslim. None of you should take a bath in stagnant water when he is sexually impure, in a state of a janaba, reported by Muslim. This is a prohibition. The Hanabi said, and a prohibition necessitates the invalidity of what has been forbidden. What is invalid here? The Hanabi said the water cannot be used for purification. That's what the water is invalid for purification. One cannot use such water for ghusl, wudu, or the removal of najasa, or the removal of an impurity. This is how they understood this hadith. Now we have different types of usages. When we wash for wudu or ghusl, for example, there are different types of usages. The first one is water used for an obligatory ritual purification, such as the first wash in an obligatory wudu or ghusl, or washing the deceased Muslim. This makes water tahir and not tahur. The second is water used for a recommended ritual purification. For example, showering for the Friday prayer, the second and third wash in wudu, assuming you gather it by itself in its own bucket, or renewing wudu. This is tahur. It does not affect the water's purifying ability, but Al-Hajjawi rahimahullah says in Al-Iqna' and Al-Zad that it's disliked. due to the difference of opinion regarding it. The third type of usage is water used for a disliked form of purification. For example, washing, the fourth wash in wudu is a disliked act. A person should never wash in wudu more than 3 times. That's the sunnah, and going afterwards is a form of extremism, and it's considered disliked in the madhab. That type of water that's used for a fourth wash would have no effect on the water. It would still be tahur. And the fourth type is water used for normal reasons, not for any ibadah, not for any act of worship, such as cooling down, washing off sweat. This also has no effect on the water as long as it does not significantly change the water. The third type of tahir water that the author mentions is, he says, أو غمس فيه كل يد مسلم مكلف قائم من نوم ليل. A small amount of water in which a Muslim's hand of legal capacity who has woken up from a night's sleep has fully submerged. So we have a Muslim who's an adult and who is sane, who woke up from night sleep that broke his wudu. He goes to the bucket of water and sticks his hand, or she sticks her hand in the water before washing it 3 times. The Prophet ﷺ forbade us from putting our hands into the container of water when we wake up until we wash it 3 times. So you take a scoop of water and wash it outside of the container. So the Hanabi said, okay, the qualifications to apply this ruling. 1, it has to be a small amount of water, less than 2 qullas, not a large amount. It has to be from a Muslim. It has to be their hand, which is fingers to wrist, not any other part of the body. It has to be a mukallaf, a sane adult, not someone insane and not a child. They have to have woken up from sleep. And it has to be night sleep, not day sleep. And it has to be sleep which breaks one's wudu, meaning anything except light sleep while standing or sitting. Any sleep other than light sleep while standing or sitting will break a person's wudu, either deep sleep or light sleep while laying down, for example. The 8th condition or quality is that the person fully submerges their hand in the water, or they pour water onto their entire hand and gather it. Either way works, but it has to be their whole hand. The last quality or qualification is before washing it 3 times, with an intention of fulfilling the hadith and saying Bismillah. The Hanabila obligate it like wudu. So all of these 9 things have to apply before considering it tahir. So if you take the opposite of, if any of these conditions are not fulfilled, then it would not affect the water. So if it was a large amount of water, if it wasn't a Muslim, if it was another part of the body other than the hand, if it was an insane person or a child, if it was not night sleep that broke a person's wudu, if they did not fully submerge their hand, if they washed their hands 3 times with an intention saying Bismillah, none of this would affect the water. Why, Hanabila, did you say this? They said the Prophet ﷺ said, إذا استيقظ أحدكم من نومه فلا يغمس يده في الإناء حتى يغسلها 3 فإنه لا يدري أين باتت يده متفق عليه وهذا لفظ Muslim. When one of you wakes up from his sleep, let him not place his hand in the container until he washes it 3 times, for he does not know where his hand was, meaning while he was asleep. Reported by Bukhari and Muslim, and this is the report of Muslim. He mentions until he washes it 3 times. In Muslim, it mentions washing it 3 times. This is a prohibition, the Hanabi said, and a prohibition necessitates the invalidity of what has been forbidden. That's a principle they have in usul. So what is invalid here? The Hanabi said the water is invalid. It cannot be used for purification. It's clean, it's tahir, but it loses its purifying ability. They said this is the cause or the reason for the prohibition. And they say the hadith is directed to the Muslim who normally prays and who woke up from night sleep and who slept a deep sleep and thus cannot tell where his hand spent the night. So therefore they say washing your hand before wudu 3 times is obligatory only if you wake up from night sleep that broke your wudu. Otherwise, it's recommended to wash your hand 3 times before wudu. So basically, this is similar to using wudu for an obligatory, using water for water that's been used for an obligatory wudu or ghusl, because they said this is an obligatory type of purification. Even if it doesn't remove hadath, it will take the same ruling as the second type that we mentioned, when a person gathers their wudu water from an obligatory wudu. Now the fourth type of tahir water they mention is أو كان آخر غسلة زالت به النجاسة وانفصل غير متغير, or what served in the last washing to remove an impurity and has separated unchanged. Okay, before we begin this, the Hanabila say if the water is not on the floor, if an impurity is not on the floor, you have to wash it 7 times. If it's on your clothes, for example, or on your body and so forth. So imagine a dirty shirt that you pour water on. Each time after pouring water into this impure shirt that's full of urine, you have to squeeze that shirt to let out the dirty water. And that's part of the cleansing process, which we'll take later at the last chapter of Tahara. So that water that comes out, in general, in the beginning, it will be changed. It will smell like urine, for example, until it becomes unchanged. When will it become unchanged? When the najasa is removed. But the Hanabila say 2 things. Anytime the water comes out unchanged, comes out changed, smelling like urine, for example, that would be najis water. It's impure. And anytime we do not reach the minimum required number for cleaning a najasa, then it would also be considered impure, even if it comes out unchanged. Because the Hanafi say before washing it 7 times, we will consider it impure until you reach the minimum number, which is 7 for them, and another report is 3, and another report is 1. But the famous report is 7 washes, except for things that are on the ground or that are difficult to wash, like walls and so forth. So imagine that dirty shirt that's full of urine, and you're washing it and wringing it each time water comes out of it. Before it's removed and before reaching the number 7, it's considered najis. Once that water comes out clean and you reach the number 7, then you're at that middle stage of it being tahir. It's tahir and it cannot be used for wudu or ghusl, but it's pure. The washes after that, or the water that comes out after that, would be considered tahur. So for example, wash number 1 to number 6 would be najis. Wash number 7, if it comes out clean, would be tahir. Or the first wash after 7 that comes out clean would be tahir. And then any washes after that would be considered tahur. It's a bit difficult to grasp the first time, but inshallah with review it will become easy. So basically, the 7th wash or more, and the water comes out clean and unchanged. Why do they say this? They say because it was the wash that purified the filthy shirt. Just like the water that removed hadath, that made a person become pure and able to pray, this is the wash that changed this shirt from being impure to being pure. So it's also qiyas on that whole concept of this water was used to purify. So the washes after that would be tahur, but that last wash, which turned the shirt from impure to pure, and the water was unchanged, that would be considered tahir. And so basically, as we said, washes 1 through 6 would be najis. Wash 7, if it's clean, would be tahir. Wash number 8 would be najis. The wash number 8 would be tahur if you gathered it. Now, most of these things will never really happen in real life, but this just shows you how the fuqaha, the scholars of fiqh, looked into so many different scenarios. And believe it or not, it's possible for people to gather. If water is scarce, then they will gather every drop that you possibly can gather. If water is not available in your area and you cannot just open tap water, that water that comes out of that shirt, people need to know its ruling and what can they use it for and what can they not use it for. So perhaps people might want to use it, for example, to clean a greasy floor, or to do something, water their plants with it, or to do whatever they want with it. They need to know what's najis, what's tahir, and what's tahur. And in cases where water is scarce, these rules may come in handy. Regardless, we explain what the fuqaha discussed in terms of all the different scenarios of water. So that's your 4 different types of water, of tahir water, which is our second category. Now the last one, inshallah, is pretty easy and pretty straightforward. Najis or impure water. The author says, الثالث نجس وهو ما تغير بنجس ويسير لاقى نجاسة لا بمحل تطهير. The third, meaning the third type of water, is najis, which is impure water. He mentions 2 types. He says the first is, it is what has changed due to an impurity. Any water that changes due to an impurity will become najis. If urine comes into water and the water either smells like urine, tastes like urine, or has the color of urine, even if it's a slight color, then we consider that water najis, whether it's 1,000 liters or 10 liters or 1 liter. Doesn't matter if it's a lot or little, by consensus of the scholars. The second is a small amount of water, meaning a less than 2 qullas, which has contacted an impurity, but not the area being purified. So if you have a small amount of water, less than 2 qullas, let's say a bucket of water, 1 drop or 1 tiny drop of najasa, let's say for example urine, comes into it, that water is automatically najis. Once you're certain, not if you doubt, if you're certain that a drop, a tiny small amount of urine or any najasa comes into that water, once that contact occurs, they consider that water najis even if it did not change. Then he makes an exception to this rule, not the area being purified, and we'll see what that means in a minute. So here we have small versus large amounts of water. On the left we have a bucket of water less than 2 qullas. If a drop of urine comes into that, or any najasa comes into that, that water would be najis. It cannot be used except in a state of emergency. On the right we have, the far right, we have something that's about 300 liters, which is 2 qullas, and as well as the jacuzzi, which is clearly above 2 qullas, maybe 4 qullas or even more. And we have this the blue 300 liter container, and that's also, these are all things that are about 2 qullas or clearly above 2 qullas. This type would not be considered najis unless it changes. The proof for this, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna al-ma'a tahurun la yunajjisu shay." Indeed, water is purifying and nothing can make it impure. Obviously, the only exception is if it changes by consensus. It's a hadith that Imam Ahmad authenticated, reported by Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i. Now, why do they distinguish? They say the hadith of Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إِذَا بَلَغَ الْمَاءُ قُلَّتَيْن لَمْ يَحْمِلِ الْخَبَثِ. If the water reaches 2 qullas, it does not carry an impurity. And another report says it does not become impure. So they said, if it reaches 2 qullas, it does not become impure unless it changes by consensus. If it's less than 2 qullas, the implied meaning of the hadith is that it will become impure if any impurity touches it. The author said, but not at the area being purified. Mahall al-tathir, the area being purified. Imagine there's urine on a person's hand, for example. and they pour water on it. It's obviously less than 2 qullas. The water before it reaches the hand is tahur. And once it reaches the hand, which is, for example, full of urine, that's called the area being purified, mahallu tathir. It might change and it would technically be considered najis. Or it might not change, and since it's less than 2 qullas, it contacted najasa and it became najis upon contact. But the Hanafi said we're not going to consider it najis at this point. We will consider it najis once it leaves the hand. Once it falls off of the hand, this is where we will apply the rulings that we just mentioned to you. Since it's a small amount, it would be najis due to the contact, but we will not consider it najis until it leaves the hand. Why, Hanafi, do you say this? Even though it contacted najasa and it probably even changed due to this najasa? They said because if we consider it najis at this point, then we're basically saying this hand is being cleaned by najis water. And you can't clean something with najis water. Therefore, we will consider it tahur until it leaves. Once it leaves, we'll consider it najis. So this is just something, a side point that they, a very meticulous exception to the rule that they made. They said because, just to be able to consider the area tahir, we need to consider it, this water tahur, until it leaves the area being purified. And the area being purified can be a hand, it could be a thobe, it can be anything else. So we're done with, in general, the concept of najasa. A lot of water cannot become najis unless it changes. A small amount of water, less than 2 qullas, cannot be najis. It becomes najis with the contact of any najasa, even if it doesn't change. Now, the next issue is tahur water. This is an important issue. Tahur water is the only liquid that can be used for tahara. We mentioned this briefly, but we'll talk about it in more detail. Wudu and ghusl can only be performed using tahur water. You cannot use tahir or najis water or any other liquid for wudu or ghusl. Removing physical impurities, najasa, can only be done with tahur water according to the famous opinion of the Hanabila. So, meaning one cannot use liquids other than water, such as chemicals, vinegar, and so forth. 2, one cannot use impure najis water for either wudu, ghusl, or removing najasa. 3, one cannot use tahir, pure water that lost its purifying properties, even for removing najasa. So a person who changes their water and makes it lemony, they cannot use that for removing a najasa on their clothes. Or if they use that, they gather their obligatory wudu water, they cannot use that to remove a najasa on their clothes, for example. For example, if someone cleans his filthy shirt that has urine with lemony water, or the water he used for an obligatory wudu, even if the shirt becomes technically clean, the Hanabila say he cannot pray in that shirt. Why? Because it takes the ruling of a shirt that has an impurity on it. If you touch that shirt and there's no more najasa in it, your hand is clean. But if you pray in that shirt, it's as if you prayed in an impure. The ruling is that that shirt is impure until you purify it properly with water according to the conditions that they mentioned. So they're pretty strict with removing najasa with tahur water, and it being 7 times, as we will see later on. But the point is here is that it has to be tahur water, and it cannot be tahir or najis or any other liquid or substance. How to clean impure water? He says, وَيَطْهُرُ بِإِضَافَةِ كَثِيرٍ وَالْكَثِيرُ بِزَوَالِ تَغَيُّرِهِ بِنَفْسِهِ وَبِنَزْحٍ بَقِيَ بَعْدَهُ كَثِيرٍ. It is purified by, he mentions 3 methods. 1, adding a large amount, meaning of tahur water to it, 2 qullas or more. And this is whether it's a lot of water or a little water, whether it's changed or it didn't change. For example, a small amount of water that contacted najasa that did not change. Any type of najis water, according to the rules we mentioned, you can clean it by adding a large amount of tahur water, and obviously the result has to be that there's no effects of the najasa, no color, taste, or smell left from the najasa. The second way, he says, a large amount of impure water is purified by these two ways. So now, the first method is for a small amount or a large amount of water. The second method is only for large amounts, more than 2 qullas. He says the first way is the natural disappearance of the impurity. For example, you have a large swimming pool of water, it changed due to najasa, and then najasa by itself left somehow. And the water became unchanged, and you can no longer taste, see, or smell the najasa. The third way, which is the second way for a large amount, is draining out the impurity while leaving a large amount of unchanged water. So you drain out the impurity, but the water has to remain above 2 qullas or above. So again, any water can be cleansed by adding a large amount of tahur water to it, and there should be no change in the water. The color, taste, or smell has to be gone. Or the second way and the third way, which are specific to a large amount of water that has become impure, is by the natural disappearance of the impurity or by draining out the impurity while leaving a large amount of unchanged water. All this is based on the fact that large amount of water can cleanse itself and cleanse other things, and a small amount of water is weak. It becomes najis by touching anything that's najis. Therefore, it doesn't have that strength, the strength of a large amount of water. That's the reasoning behind this distinction that they make. And there's a lot of detail we will not get into, inshallah. So, for example, so now in general, how do we clean water? If it's a small amount, we only have one choice. You add 2 qullas or more with the condition that there's no trace, meaning no color, taste, or smell of the impurity. If it's a large amount of water, we have 3 options. One is adding a large amount of water to it, or 2, the water purifies itself such that there's no trace, color, taste, or smell of the impurity, or 3, draining out the water until there's no trace, color, taste, or smell of the impurity, but with the condition that 2 qullas or more remain in the water, remain with the water. So here, for example, we have adding a large amount of tahur water and draining the impurity. The first one is a swimming pool that was najis, it smelled like urine or tasted like urine. You can add 2 qullas, like let's say a maximum of 307 liters of water, until that smell goes away and until the color, taste, or smell goes away. That's one way of cleaning that swimming pool. Another way, if that swimming pool is dirty, they can drain the water out until the color, taste, or smell is gone, as long as there's 2 qullas left over. The next issue, what causes a large amount of water to become impure? We already took this, but this is a reinforcement of that. He says, فَإِنْ بَلَغَ الْمَاءُ قُلَّتَيْنِ وَهُمَا 400 رطل و46 و3 أسباع رطل مصري لم ينجس إلا بالتغير. If the water reaches 2 qullas, then he gives you its weight in Egyptian pounds because he's from Egypt. He says equivalent to 446 3/7 Egyptian pounds. It will not become impure except due to change. So we said a large amount of water does not become najis unless it changes its color, taste, or smell. A small amount of water, less than 2 qullas, becomes najis when it contacts the smallest amount of najasa, even if it does not change. And we mentioned in the slides of the first lecture that there's a lot of different opinion regarding the amount in modern liters of 2 qullas. We mentioned 307, that's the highest. And there might be even a bit higher, but 307 is pretty much the highest. The lowest is like 156. Then there are things in the middle around 230, 270, or a bit more, and some are 190 liters. So basically, if you're at 307 liters, you're definitely at 2 qullas. And if you're 150 liters or less, you're definitely less than 2 qullas. Then between that, between 150 and 307, you have difference of opinion, and this issue needs more research to be able to come up with a more accurate estimation. There's a lot of things that have been written regarding this, but just so that you can have an idea that once you've reached 307 liters, 80% of a bathtub, you're clearly above 2 qullas, or you're at 2 qullas or more. If you're at 150 liters, then you're under 2 qullas for sure. And then in between that, there's a lot of difference of opinion, and it needs more research. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. So if you check the slide has been edited from the first class. It will mention this detail. Wallahu a'lam. Now, the last part of this chapter are matters of doubt and resemblance, when two things resemble each other and you don't know what to do. So the author says, so after we know the different categories of water, we want to know what happens if there's doubt. He says, وَإِن شَكَّ فِي تَنَجُّسِ مَاءٍ أَوْ غَيْرِهِ بَنَى عَلَى الْيَقِينِ. If one doubts in the impurity of water or something else, he is to act upon certainty. What does this mean? This is based on a principle in Sharia that says, الْيَقِينَ لَا يَزُولُ بِالشَّكِّ. Certainty cannot be removed by doubt. Certainty cannot be removed except with certainty. He knows 100% that this container has tahur water, but is unsure if a dog licked it or not. It's a small bucket of water. Did a dog lick it, which is najis, and its saliva also is najis? Did a dog lick it or not? We'll say it's tahur until you're sure you saw the dog lick it, or you're certain that najasa came into it and made it najis. He knows the dog, or the opposite. He knows the dog licked the water and it's najis. It's not pure. But he cannot remember if he cleaned this water afterwards or not. Then we'll say it's najis until you're certain that you cleaned it. Another thing, other than water, the same rule applies. He says he knows his pants are clean, but he's not sure if a drop of urine came onto it or not. We say ignore the doubt until you're certain that that urine came onto your clothes or came onto your pants. The opposite, he knows his shirt had urine on it, but he can't remember if he washed it off or not. We'll say consider it najis until you're certain and you remember that you washed it off. This principle also we'll see in wudu. If you're sure you have wudu and you can't remember if you broke it or not, we consider you in a state of wudu. Or if you know you went to the bathroom but you can't remember if you made wudu afterwards or not, we'll consider that you need to make wudu and you're not in a state of purity. The second issue, he says, وَإِنِ اشْتَبَهَ طَهُورٌ بِنَجِسٍ لَمْ يَتَحَرَّهُ وَيَتَيَمَّمْ لِعَدَمْ غَيْرِهِمَا. If tahur water cannot be distinguished from impure water, najis water, he does not try to determine the tahur water. Rather, he performs tayammum in the absence of other water. So here, he example has 2 buckets full of water. A dog licked one of those containers. He drank from one of those buckets. But he cannot remember which one it was. Was it the one on the right or the one on the left? He has no other water. Obviously, if he has other pure water that has no doubt, he has to use that. But it's one of these 2 containers and a dog licked one of them. For sure it's najis. He cannot use it. The other one's tahur. He does not know which one it is. He says leave them alone. You don't have to dump the waters. You do not have to mix them together. And perform tayammum. And pray with tayammum, where you strike the earth and the dirt with your hands, and you wipe your hands and your face and then your hands, as you will see in the chapter of tayammum, and you can pray with that. Why? Because he has to avoid the najis water, and there's no way to avoid the najis water unless he avoids both waters. Now, the scholars say if he's able to mix the 2 together, for example, and it will become tahur in a large container, and it will become tahur. Let's say, for example, both containers are 2 qullas of water. If both are 2 qullas of water, and you can combine them in one larger container, and there will be no change, and there will be a lot of water cleansed, najis water, that's a different story. But here we're talking about in a way where he does not have any other water and he cannot clean this water in any way. The third scenario he mentions, when اشتبه بطاهر توضأ وضوءا واحدا من كل غرفة or غرفة. If he cannot distinguish it, meaning tahur water from tahir water, he performs one wudu from each of them, taking one scoop from each container. For example, one of these containers was used for an obligatory wudu. He gathered his wudu from it, but he cannot remember which one was his wudu water, and the other one is tahur water. So it's one is tahir and one is tahur. In such a case, or he stuck his hand in it after waking up from night sleep, for example, and he can't remember which one it was. So one's tahir and one's tahur. You're allowed to use tahir, it doesn't make you najis, and you need tahur for wudu. So what do they say? They say make wudu from each of them. Rinse your mouth and your nose and wash your face with the first one and do the same again with the second one. Wash your arms with the first one and do the same with the second one. One scoop, one scoop. Wipe your head from the right and then wipe your head with the left one. Wash your feet with the right one and then wash your feet with the left one. They say do this so that you will have certainty that your wudu has been performed completely with tahur water. As for the tahir water that you use, it doesn't matter. It does not affect your wudu whatsoever. And they say only make one wudu using two scoops so that you don't have doubt in your intention. If you made wudu with bucket number one and then wudu with bucket number two, each time you'll be wondering, did I make it wudu with the correct bucket or did I not? Therefore, they say you should not have doubts in your intention without reason. If it's possible to have no doubt in your intention, then this is necessary for the act of worship to be correct. You have to have certainty in your intention. This is why they say one scoop from each, and you only perform one wudu and you pray one time. Then the author mentions a fourth issue of resemblance, or a fourth issue of doubt or resemblance. He says, وَإِنْ اشْتَبَهَتْ ثِيَابٌ طَاهِرَةٌ بِنَجِسَةٍ صَلَّى فِي كُلِّ ثَوْبٍ بِعَدَدِ النَّجِسَةِ وَزَادَ صَلَاةً. If clean garments cannot be distinguished from impure garments, prayer is performed in each garment equivalent to the number of impure garments plus one additional prayer. So here a woman has 5 abayas, and 2 of these 5 abayas she knows has urine on them from her baby girl, for example, or her baby boy, but she doesn't know which ones. She cannot smell it, she cannot see it. It was a small amount and it's been a while. She cannot wash, let's assume she cannot wash them, and she has no other garments. 2 out of these 5 for sure are najis, and you cannot pray in a najis or impure thobe. They say she prays the Asr prayer, for example, or Maghrib, whatever it is, 3 times using 3 different abayas. She'll pick one abaya randomly and pray in it, then take the second one and pray the same prayer again, and take the third abaya and pray in it. Why? Because worst case scenario, the first one is najis, the second one is najis, then the third one has to be pure. That's the only way to make sure that she prayed in one clean abaya. That's assuming she has no other clothes and assuming she cannot wash the abaya. These are also strange scenarios, but it just teaches you how to think and apply the rules of certainty and so forth. وَكَذَا أَمْكِنَةٌ ضَيِّقَةٌ. The same applies in tight spaces. So here a person's in a jail cell, for example, a tiny room. A cat urinated in one of the 4 corners of this jail cell. One out of these 4 corners is najis, but he doesn't know which corner. He doesn't have a prayer rug and he can't wash it off. He prays in 2 different corners. One corner is najis, add 1 more. So pray in one corner, then pray in another corner. If it was 2 that are najis, he would pray in 3 corners. If 3 were najis, he would pray in 4 corners. The point is he wants to pray until he's certain that he prayed in a clean area. This is obviously that if he cannot tell, if he can tell, he can smell where the urine is, or he knows where the urine is, then he avoids that area, he has no problem. If he can wash it, he has no problem. If he has a clean prayer rug to separate between him and the urine, he has no problem. Then he says, وَيُصَلِّي فِي وَاسِعَةٍ بِلَا تَحَرٍّ. He prays in a vast space, meaning wherever he wishes, without having to determine where the clean area is. So, for example, if a cat urinated somewhere in this huge courtyard in a masjid and it dried up, but he doesn't know where exactly, he can pray anywhere he wishes. He does not have to try to figure it out, because this is very difficult, and the religion, whenever there's difficulty, ease comes. As for a small room, it's not that difficult. As for a large area, you cannot tell him keep praying in this area. Allah ta'ala alam. Now, all of these issues, we're not going to get into the difference of opinion amongst the scholars, or the get in-depth discussion regarding what's stronger and so forth. The whole point of this class is just to understand what the scholars of fiqh and the Hanabila mention in their books. One, a person masters that and understands the concepts, and kind of gets an understanding of the reasoning behind it. Later on, as they develop in their studies of fiqh, they can take the more in-depth studies of usul al-fiqh and evidences and differences of opinion and what's stronger and so forth. So we just present this, and in the end, what you follow, as we said, you are a muqallid, a person who follows Islamic scholarship and scholars. You can follow any of the madhahib you wish, or any scholar of ijtihad that you trust, as long as you're following valid opinion and valid scholarship. There's no issue whatsoever. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. The whole point of this class is just to make you understand this text and be able to apply it. And we're not really getting into the differences of opinions and the other strong opinions, or even perhaps stronger opinions and so forth, unless it's absolutely necessary, and then we can cover it in the question and answer session. But the class is dedicated to explain this book and the madhab of the Hanabila and some of their reasonings. And as we mentioned, we might mention difference of opinion from time to time. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Now, contemporary issues, a few that deal with water. Dry cleaning clothes that have impurities. This is done through a liquid solvent, dry cleaning your clothes, if you have a najasa or impurity on it. How is dry cleaning happening? This is done through a liquid solvent that contains little or no water, which cleans the garment and it quickly evaporates. According to the madhab, this would be invalid, because it was not removed by water. Najasa has to be removed by tahur water, and this liquid solvent is not tahur water. According to the second opinion, which is chosen by Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah ta'ala, second opinion within the madhab, and it's in other madhab as well, that in some other madhab, that impurities can be removed by other than water, and it would be valid. So only based on that opinion would a person be able to dry clean a shirt or a garment that has najasa on it without using water. But if a person uses water, then that's the safer route, and that would be valid according to all of the schools. The second issue, wastewater treatment, turning sewage water to tap water. It becomes tahur and can be used for tahara, removing najasa, and drinking, unless it is known that it is medically harmful to drink it. The reasoning is that a large amount of impure water becomes pure if the impurity goes away by itself, and if it returns to having no change due to the najasa. And this is the fiqh councils of today have they've taken this opinion. Very few scholars, though, contended this opinion. Like Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd rahimahullah, he had an issue with it. But the vast majority of scholars took this opinion, and in reality, one cannot apply other than this opinion, because there's many areas where they only have this type of tap water, which has been treated from wastewater. So now, if you have any questions, there are two questions that I will cover that I've received through email, but I will try to take questions. Let's just take these two questions first, and then since they came first and they're related to the previous class, and we'll take more questions from anyone only related to what we have studied and nothing else, inshallah. Question students asked, things that make water tahur but disliked, or tahir. Does this only apply when water is less than 2 qullas? For example, if water is full of sea salt and changes the taste, or it's freezing cold, or it was heated with donkey's dung, but the amount is more than 2 qullas. Are these still tahur and disliked if other options are available, or are they no longer disliked regardless? The answer is the water is tahur but disliked even if it's more than 2 qullas. Unless they mention the issue of a lot or a little water, then it's general. So water, that sea salt that changes, a large amount of water, a large amount of freezing cold water, a large amount of water that was heated with donkey dung, all of this would be disliked but tahur. If, for example, table salt is added to water, changing its taste, but it's more than 2 qullas, is that no longer tahir? The answer, the water would be tahir and not tahur if it's a significant change in terms of changing the water due to lemons or or table salt. Or if any water is more than 2 qullas, no matter what touches it, affecting its taste, smell, or any intrinsic property, is always tahur and never disliked. No, if it's more than 2 qullas and it changes significantly, it would become tahir. And unless it's sea salt or those things that we mentioned, it would be tahur. As for using water for wudu, or the things we mentioned, they specifically mention it has to be less than 2 qullas. So when there's a difference between 2 qullas and less than 2 qullas, the Hanabila specifically mention it, and it will be clear. The second question that came was on swimming pool water. In a swimming pool that most of the people urinate in while swimming, and the tap water cuts off and there's no way of water, can we make wudu with pool water as it is more than 2 qullas? First of all, if the water's color, taste, color, or smell changes due to the urine, it would be impure and cannot be used for anything if it does, unless there's an emergency. If it doesn't, then it is pure with the condition that it's pure, okay? If it doesn't change, if it's considered tahur water, if it's not a significant change of chlorine. As for using swimming pool water in general, if the chlorine added isn't so much that it significantly changes the water's taste or smell, it wouldn't be a problem. It's tahur. But if the chlorine added is a lot such that it significantly changes the water's taste or smell, then, as we said, there's a difference of opinion in the madhab. The madhab says it's tahir and not tahur. Thus, you couldn't use it for wudu. And if there's no other water available in the city, you would have to find other water, basically. If you can drive to a store and purchase water or get water from another area, then you must do so. But notice, if it becomes tahir, the Hanabila are even more strict on what makes it najis. Even a small amount of najasa would make it najis if it's tahir and not tahur. And there's also a difference of opinion regarding this, but the Hanabila say if it becomes tahir and not tahur, then it becomes najis regardless, with any najasa coming into it. But notice, don't assume that people urinate in it. That's not enough to say that people urinate in it, even if it's normal for people to urinate in it, because there's always a chance that they did not. And the asal is that everything is tahur, water is tahur, and the asal is something is tahir unless there's a najasa that's proven to come into the water. So that's why you have to act based on knowledge of it, either through color, taste, or smell, or anything that gives you certainty that najasa came into the water. It's not enough to just assume that urine came into it unless there's proof for it. Allah Ta'ala A'lam. Okay, inshallah, we'll take questions now. Try to make sure that it's on topic so that we do not get off topic, inshallah. If there's anything off topic, I will not read it. Okay, what if there's a small amount of water left that the woman used and more water is added? Can a man use this water to remove hadath? So basically, the 2 qullas, the bucket of water that the woman used, that she scooped from, a man cannot use it. You'd have to add a lot of water for it to become tahur. If there's a lot of tahur water mixed with this water, it has to basically overcome the tahir water, such that that tahir water, if it was something else, it wouldn't change the tahur water. And if it was a large amount of water, if she was using, for example, a tub full of water, that's 2 qullas, then there would be no issue with that water. It's only if it's a small amount. Cedar leaves. What about cedar leaves? Cedar leaves is a foreign. If you put it in water, it's a foreign object, unless it falls in the water from, the tree is near the water. That it falls, that's something else. But if you take cedar leaves and crush them, or place them in the water, even if you don't crush them, it's like lemons. If it's a small change, it won't affect the water. If it's a major, significant change, it would affect it and make it tahir. Would tea that is made with only water and a small amount of tea be considered tahur? Depending on the level of change. Usually, any tea that you make, there will be a significant amount of change. Unless you put a tea bag in cold water and it does not change except for very slightly. Certainty is not annulled by doubt. Yes, that's one of the 5 major fiqh maxims in Islam. Very important qaida fiqhiyya or fiqh maxim. What is the link to purchase Umdat At-Talib textbook for the class English edition, please? It's in the Google document. On the top, you'll have the Amazon link. So check the Google document, inshallah, which was available upon registration, and it's also mentioned several times in the Telegram group. Shaykh al-Islam. Who is Shaykh al-Islam? Shaykh al-Islam Taqiyuddin Abu al-Abbas Ahmad ibn Abd al-Halim ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, one of the great scholars of the Hanbali madhab, who's reached a level of ijtihad mutlaq and the Hanabila since his time and until the later books care a lot about his ikhtiyarat, his fiqh opinions, what he considers to be the madhab of Imam Ahmad, as well as what he personally chooses as a stronger opinion, as well as other scholars of the madhab, Ibn Qudama rahimahullah and Al-Majd ibn Taymiyyah and others. But Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah's ikhtiyarat have a strong position in the madhab. Whenever I say Shaykh al-Islam, I mean Ibn Taymiyyah. Okay, in water with a slight change, such as lemon, is that tahur or tahir? The one of third case. You had 3 images up on the slide. If it's a slight change, it would be tahur. If you take a tiny slice of lemon and put it in cold water, and it does not make a significant change in color, taste, or smell, it would be tahur. When washing to remove an impurity, is it okay to wash it in the washing machine, or should you wring it out 7 times? According to the Hanabila, you need to wash it out 7 times with water, and then you throw it into the washing machine. Because even if you have water with soap mixed, you need water first, pure water, to clean the najasa. And this would go back to the difference of opinion that we mentioned. The majority say you have to use water to remove najasa, versus the Hanafi opinion, a second riwayah of Imam Ahmad, which Shaykh al-Islam shows that anything can remove najasa. This is where the difference of opinion, one of the difference of opinion. So it's safer to wash it 7 times outside and then throw it into the washing machine if there's a certain najasa, such as a urine. What is the significance of a 7-year-old being present with a woman or not? Very good question. In the case where we said the leftover water from a woman's ghusl wudu was left over in a bucket or container, the Hanabila say the khalwa is the khalwa of nikah. So basically, when is she alone with the water? Because the companion said if she's alone with the water, then don't come near it, meaning for wudu. So this is called khalwa. This occurs in nikah. If a man marries a woman, when he owes her half of the dowry. When does she owe her the full dowry? If there's he consummates the marriage and there's intercourse, or if they're alone. When are they alone? If no one 7 years old or older are with the couple. And likewise, it's haram for a man to be alone with a non-mahram woman behind closed doors where no one can see or hear them. When does that, if you have a 7-year-old boy or girl or older, 7, 8, 9, doesn't matter, in the room, then there's no khalwa. Because the Prophet ﷺ prayed with Anas radiallahu anhu and one of his female relatives in the house. From this, the scholar said that the mumayyiz, the 7-year-old, removes khalwa. There's no more seclusion if there is a 7-year-old in the room. And they mentioned the 7-year-old because that's the time the Prophet ﷺ commanded a child to pray. They said, command your children to pray at the age of 7. This shows that this is the age where they can start distinguishing and they can have a proper niyyah and can start understanding what's going on. Before that, a baby, whether they're there or not, it makes no difference. In the shirt example, is the water coming out from the 7th wash tahir or tahur? It would be tahir. What if najasa is still there? We said it has to be 2 conditions. There's no najasa and the water comes out clean. There's no najasa on the shirt and the water comes out clean, and the minimum washes have occurred. If it's not the earth or on the floor, then it's 7 washes according to the Hanabila. So if the shirt becomes clean and the water becomes clean at wash number 10, that's the one that would make it, that would be tahir, and wash number 11 would be tahur. It's also similar. In the shirt example, if najasa is still there on the 8th wash, is that water coming out najis, tahur or tahir? It would be najis. Any water that's connected to something najis would be najis until that shirt is clean and the water is clean. So that last wash, that would be tahir, and after that would be tahur. 7 is just the minimum. If we consider 7 to be the required number according to the madhab. If a man or woman mix savlon, etc., into a bucket full of water for his or her illness, would purifying from the major najasa with that water be valid? I don't know what that material it is, but if it's a pure material, whatever, if it's for some sort of medication, then, and it's a pure material, that's what I'm assuming, then if it significantly changes the water, it would be tahir and it could not be used for the removal of najasa according to the mu'tamad of the madhab. But if it's a slight change, an insignificant change, then it would still be tahur. When something has an impurity, does that piece of garment need to be washed 7 times back to back in the washer for that garment to become pure again? The washing machine is a bit different. It depends really on how it works, how many times it drains out the water, new water comes in. So assuming new water comes in and it drains out, then it would be like washing 7 times. But if it's one time, or it would be difficult unless you know how a washing machine works. So that's why I recommend you wash a najasa, if it's urine or any najasa, outside of the washing machine, then throw it into the washing machine. So it really depends. If the washing machine does the process of washing and draining 7 times, then it would be valid according to the Hanabila. If you want that, what Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah takes is that at the end, he cares about the end result. If there's najasa, color, taste, or smell on the garment or in the water, it's najis. Otherwise, it's not. That's what a lot of modern muftis and fiqh councils go by. It's a very strong opinion, to be honest. I'm just explaining, though, what the madhab says so that you don't confuse yourself and you can build a foundation. Can an impure garment be placed with other garments which are just dirty in the same load in the wash? Uh, you should not do that. You should wash what's najis, what has urine or, for example, stool and so forth. Separate that. Wash it properly before throwing it in the washing machine. But in the end, uh, if the washing machine does the process of washing 7 times or more and drains each time and puts new water, then it would be uh, basically clean at the end, as long as there's no color, taste, or smell on any of the clothes. What about soap water? Is it tahur, makruh? If there's a lot of soap in the water, it would be, and it changes the water significantly, it would be tahir and not tahur. Especially if it makes the water slimy and it's a significant amount, then it would be tahir and not tahur. This would be valid only according to the Ahnaf and the second opinion of Imam Ahmad, which Shaykh Islam chose, but according to the Hanabila, they say you have to use pure water. Water that's tahur. I have a few questions. Why is it said that the woman being alone doing ritual impurity for male is najis? It's not najis, it's tahir. But it cannot be used for him to remove hadath, for wudu or ghusl, that's for a man. It's an issue of ta'abbud. It's ununderstood why. The other opinion is that it's tahur, he can use it. But the Hanabil say, due to the hadith, we don't understand the reasoning. We cannot tell you why. Why have they said that she must be alone? Because the Sahabi explained it in that sense. He said, if you're together, the Prophet ﷺ in one hadith says, وَلْيَغْتَرِفَا جَمِيعًا. Let them scoop the water together. And in that hadith, he says, the man should not take the remnant or the remnants of the tahur of the woman. And the Sahabi said, if you guys are together, it's fine. And if she's alone with it, then don't use it for wudu or ghusl. That is the Hanbali position. The other opinion that it's tahur and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it can be used for wudu and ghusl for a man, and this is the opinion of the majority of scholars. And we'll not get into the reasoning and the proof and so forth. Just explaining. It's not najis. In all cases, it's not najis. It's pure. But it cannot be used. It's tahur even. It's not even tahir. Sorry. Again, that water that woman was alone with is tahur, the highest level of water. However, a man cannot use it for wudu or ghusl. He can use it for anything else. And a woman can use it, and a child can use it, and so forth. If the Hanabila consider the washing of najasa to be impure, even if it comes off the first time, how do we do with clothes washed in the washing machine? It depends on how many times the washing machine throws in water and drains it, according to the Hanabila. It would be an issue if it doesn't do it 7 times. So that's why if you want to be a Hanbali and wash your clothes, wash them outside before putting them in the machine. And that's better, to be honest, if there's urine or so forth, to wash it properly by itself and not get other clothes thrown in there. Otherwise, the only way out is the other opinion that says as long as najasa is cleaned, regardless of the amount of times, then it's fine. Regardless, it would be an issue for the Hanabila unless you can know that it's washed 7 times and drained 7 times. In the case purification where you're unsure which container contains tahur and the other has tahir water, can you do one wudu from each, not alternating between the two? That's one of the opinions of the Hanabila. However, the only issue with that is that you'll have doubt in your intention. Each time you won't know, did I make correct wudu or not? So just like when you pray Dhuhr, you have to be sure that you're praying Dhuhr. You can't have a doubt in your intention. Likewise, when you make wudu, you should have certainty that you made a correct wudu. That's why. But if you do one of each, then you're certain that your wudu was complete and correct. If water has sea salt added and is more than 2 qullas, but heated on cow dung, I'd like to know which category it falls. So if it changes due to sea salt, it's tahur. However, it would be makruh if you have other options. And you heated it on cow dung, which is pure, so it's still tahur. So it would be tahur, and it would be only disliked due to the difference of opinion if you have other options. If you have no other options, it becomes obligatory to use. What about using a washing machine which rinses less than 7 times, but the use of soap, for example, removes the najasa? To be honest, let me just make life easier for you. For the Hanabila, it's an issue if it's not washing 7 and draining 7 times with pure water. But this is where I would say follow the other opinion, which does not require 7 washes. Likewise, the opinion that allows washing najasa with other than water, such as soapy water and so forth. Yani basically follow the opinion of Shaykh al-Islam and the Ahnaf regarding this, and the second opinion of Imam Ahmad. If this is going to cause you great difficulty, if in terms of strength, it is a very strong opinion. I'm just explaining to you what the madhab says and why they say it and how to apply it. Some of these things will not be convenient, and some of these things there will be other opinions that you're aware of or that you follow. That's the purpose of this class, is to be able to apply, to learn this, understand what they're saying and apply it. But it's not necessary that you're going to follow every single one of these issues or these rules that are mentioned here. But again, it's better to wash najasa outside of a washing machine in general. A lot of questions on washing machines. Another question, washing najas clothes in a washing machine or with detergent, it would not be clean according to the madhab. I really don't know, because the washing machines start off with water. Unless you add soap from the beginning, then it would be soapy water. It would be an issue. Cleaning it with pure soapy water, it would be an issue according to the madhab. It would be problematic. However, around this, in this day where many wash using washing machines. Either you can wash outside the washing machine something that has najasa on it, urine, not just dirty clothes that are sweaty. I'm talking about urine or stool and so forth, or that has blood. Wash it outside 7 times with water and then throw it in the washing machine. And you can separate your the clothes that are najis from the clothes that are not najis. Sheikh, you said we are muqallid. How is that so? Because we are following the scholar Sheikh with dalil proof, and as the muqallid, as the manaj, is the one who follows without any dalil. Not necessarily. You don't have to know the proof. You're following a scholar. You're not able to derive the ruling by yourself. So if you're following a scholar and their scholarly opinion, you're doing taqleed of that scholar, because you can't arrive to that conclusion by yourself. You don't have the tools to be able to do so. Even if he tells you the reason is such and such, you're just following what he's saying. So it's like a doctor. When you ask a doctor their medical opinion, they say, take this medication. And you might tell them why. Why not this medication? They'll tell you because such and such. So now you kind of memorize their answer. You memorize, okay, I'm taking this medication because of these reasons, and I'm not taking this medication because of these reasons. The medical doctor that reached that conclusion with their expertise is not like the person following them. So whether you knew their proof or not, it's nice to know, but it does not make you a scholar. You're just being more educated, perhaps, or knowing a bit more than the person who just follows the medical doctor without asking why. So if you follow a certain opinion and then you ask why and they tell you this reasoning, now you're at a perhaps a better level than the person who's following not knowing the reasoning. So you knowing why it's being said is still taqlid, because you're following the scholar and you're following the proof. You're not deriving it on your own, and you're not able to choose the stronger opinion based on looking at the proofs on your own. But regardless, it doesn't matter in terms of the end result. It's the same, whether you know the reasoning or the deal or you don't know. So basically, the scholars look at it like this: either it's a scholar or a non-scholar, and then the scholars themselves are mujtahideen. There's levels of ijtihad. How do the Hanbali scholars determine whether the prohibition in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, such as submerging hand in a bucket after waking up, is a mere dislikeness or a definite prohibition? Based on certain clues or certain qara'in, they call them, regarding the hadith. Some will consider it to be disliked. Some scholars consider it to be disliked. The Hanabila consider it to cause the water to be tahir. Others said it is because it causes it's a person's has doubt in their hand. It could be perhaps touch najasa to make the water clean, to be on the safe side, and so forth. So there's a lot of difference of opinion regarding understanding this hadith and many other hadith. And the scholars of hadith and the shuruh of the hadith and the shuruh of fiqh, or the commentaries on fiqh, they explain why they said what they said. Why did they consider it haram and not disliked? And why did they consider it invalid? And what type of invalidity is it? And so forth. Especially now, the Hanabi consider it a sort of ta'abbud, an act of worship, a ritual which we don't understand. So once that happens, then it becomes difficult to explain past that. Will it be tahir or tahur? If tahur, then tahur liked or disliked. I don't know which one you're referring to. I don't know which situation. What's the passing score for the quizzes? The quizzes are for your own benefit. Take them as many times as you can until you get the highest score that you can. The certificate will be based on those who take all of the quizzes and pass the final exam. But if you want to pass the final exam, you need to study and try to do your best on quizzes and figure out what you did wrong and correct it. The quizzes will be comprehensive. We'll try to cover everything in the quizzes like the last time, but the final exam will be a selection from each chapter. Bi-idhnillah ta'ala. The point is to master. Don't worry about score, worry about mastering, inshallah. Okay, according to the Mu'tamad position of the Hanabila, purifying clothing with laundry detergent would make the water used tahir and not tahur. It's mixing something pure with tahir. It's like mixing lemons. That would make it tahir and not tahur. So if you want to clean water with soapy water, first wash it 7 times, then do whatever you want with the soapy water. The link for the English version of the textbook we mentioned in the Google document. I'll post it, inshallah, regularly for those who missed it. Can tahir water even be used for ghusl or wudu? Tahir and not tahur water cannot be used for ghusl or wudu or even for removal of najasa. It can be used to, you can drink it, you can water, and if it comes on your clothes, you can use it for anything that's not wudu or ghusl or removal of najasa according to the famous opinion. What is the Islamic position on washing machines when washing najasa in clothes? It all goes back to the opinion you take. Is water required? Tahur water required, or can you wash with something tahir, such as soapy water and so forth? And is there a minimum number required? The majority of scholars say you don't need to wash 7 times, but you need to wash with water. The Hanabila say 7 times. Then the second issue is, can you only use tahur water to remove najasa, or can you use something else? The majority say you have to use tahur water, and the Hanafis, in the second opinion of Imam Ahmad, and the chosen opinion of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, is that you can use anything to remove najasa as long as it gets removed. That's personally the opinion I take, but I'm just, as I told you, the purpose of the class is to explain the madhab. But if I see that you want to know other opinions, or there's an issue you're struggling with, I will mention it, inshallah, in the question and answer session. If I'm praying and I feel like a drop of urine has come, what is the ruling? You have to be certain that urine came out for it to break wudu, and that it came onto the clothes for it to be najis. Doubt is not enough, will not do it. Doubting will not make a ruling, make you break your wudu or make your clothes najis. You have to be certain. And if you have whispers from the shaitan or from your nafs, ignore it until you're certain 100% that something came out. Isn't there a hadith or Islamic ruling that if a person has prayed obligatory prayer and cannot say by yaqeen that it was invalid, that he must not repeat it? Yes, that's normal situations. If you pray dhuhr, for example, you don't repeat it unless you come to the masjid and they're praying jama'ah. However, in this case, or if the iqam is made while you're in the masjid, in this case, you would, the Hanafi are saying you're repeating it to fulfill the condition of the prayer. So, this is the only reason that they say repeat it with another thawb, for example, until you're certain. And these are rare situations. If you knew, you can tell which thawb is clean and which one's not, you wouldn't have to repeat the prayer. But these are abnormal situations, and you have the issue of having to pray in a clean thawb and having to pray with basically pray in a clean thawb or in a clean area. And this is just the ijtihad of the Hanabila. Other scholars say try to figure it out and just pray wherever you can. But this is based on the certainty. You're certain you have to pray with a clean thawb in a clean area. You mentioned the third reason for tahir water that is forbidden is if a Muslim adult's hand is submerged in water. Tahir water, yes. Does this also apply to non-Muslims' hand if they submerge it in water? No. It is only a Muslim who, according to the Hanabila, because it's ta'abbudi, it's a ritual. The Prophet ﷺ was talking to the Muslims who pray, so it's specific to them. Muslim who is adult and who is sane. After waking up from night sleep, that breaks a person's wudu. We mentioned washing machines a lot. According to Hanabila, it's the issue of 7 times washing with water and draining it each time. According to the other madhahib, that if it's water and it's even 1 time and it removes the najasa, it's fine. And according to the second opinion of Imam Ahmad and Ahnaf, that any water with detergent, anything that's pure that removes the color, taste, and smell of the najasa is valid. So we mentioned the difference of opinion regarding this. Some people add different leaves in the water and boil it for the healing properties of the leaves. Is that water tahur? If it changes significantly, it's tahir and not tahur. If it does not change, if it changes slightly, it would be tahur, but most probably if they're boiling it, it's going to change significantly. So you apply the rule. It'd be extremely beneficial if we had notes prior to the class so we can mark up the notes with your commentary as we are watching. Yeah, I wish that could be the case, but it's not possible now. So what you want to do is try to understand and focus in class, and then look at the notes and read them over, and perhaps watch the class again with those notes to kind of internalize it. Which book should a student memorize as a basic method in the field of fiqh? Barakallahu fikum. If they have the ability to memorize in Arabic and understand, then the book that they are studying. So for example, Umdat At-Talib would be a good book. If they're studying this book, it's excellent to memorize this, or Akhsar al-Mukhtasarat if they're studying that. Basically, they should memorize one small text or a beginner text, and then a more advanced text later on after they develop themselves more. If we use washing up liquid on a t-shirt and use tahur water, is that okay? If the t-shirt is najis, it has to be washed with tahur water 7 times according to the madhab. We mentioned the issue of 7 times. That's only the Hanabila say this. The others say 1 wash is enough until it gets removed. And this is the stronger opinion of Allah Ta'ala alam. But the second issue is tahur water. The majority say you have to use tahur water, not mixed with detergent, except for the Ahnaf and the second opinion of Imam Ahmad. So the questions keep repeating regarding these 2 issues: the number of washes, and is water, tahur water, a condition or not. If water has table salt but it's heated on cow dung, what will it be considered? Table salt that changes it makes it tahir. So after that, if it changes significantly, if it's heated on cow dung, it's heated on pure water, it will still be tahir and not tahur. Unless it's a small amount of table salt that does not significantly change it, it would be tahur. Is it preferred to use tahir water or tayammum in case of no other water? Okay, depends on the tahir water. According to the Hanabila, if water changes significantly due to, for example, the lemons being squeezed in it, then you have to do tayammum if that's your only choice. Likewise, if you use that water for removal of a hadath, obligatory wudu or ghusl, you have to make tayammum if that's your only choice. Now, the other ones that there's a difference of opinion, the one regarding a woman being alone with the water, with the conditions mentioned, or a man sticking his hand, or a person sticking his hand in the water before washing them 3 times from night sleep, that's the second one. Because there's a strong difference of opinion regarding this, what did the Hanabila say? They say if this is your only water, use it for wudu and make tayammum to be on the safe side. Use it for wudu based on the opinion that says it's tahur, which is a strong opinion in the madhab and outside the madhab, and the majority opinion. But also make tayammum to be on the safe side just in case it's not tahur. Regarding those 2 only. But the first 2 categories of water that changed due to lemons or water that's used for an obligatory wudu or ghusl, they say that's just like orange juice. Don't use it. And make tayammum if you have no other choice. But the second 2 categories, or sorry, the category of sticking your hand in the water, obviously that's tahir. And you cannot use it. If you have other options, use it. If you don't have any other options, make wudu with it and make tayammum, the Hanabila say. As for the one that a woman is alone with, that's tahur. It's tahur. A woman can use it, a child can use it, but a man cannot use it for wudu and ghusl. Unless he has no other water, they say use that water and make tayammum. Okay, if my cat urinated on my floor, am I correct in understanding just one clean, yes, one, if you take a bucket of water and pour it onto the floor and it removes until the najasa is removed, that would be enough. But in general, if there's water on urine on the floor, it really depends on where it is. Yani. If you're able to soak it up first to lessen it and then pour water on it, the point is one wash is enough as long as it removes the essence of the najasa and the color, taste, and smell, whatever is left of it. We'll take that in the last chapter regarding removing najasa. If the couple can do ghusl from the same container, why is the water not okay if the woman uses it alone? As we said, the Hanabila took this opinion. They said this is what's mentioned in the hadith, and it's ta'abbudi. We don't know why. It's just like, why do we pray Maghrib 3 times? It has nothing to do with the woman is completely clean and she's pure. And even Ibn Abbas said she's more pure, and he took the opinion that it does not affect the water, which is the majority opinion. The Hanabi took the other opinion of some other companions based on the hadith, and they said we don't know why. Don't ask us why, because we don't know why. We have no idea why. It's like asking me why is Maghrib 3 times. It's not an issue of logic or trying to make sense of it. If I use the bucket of water to make ghusl, the water left over in the bucket, can another person use it? Basically, as long as it's only if a woman has a bucket of water and she's alone with it completely, it will not remove it cannot be used by a man for wudu and ghusl. It can be used by a woman, it can be used by a child, according to the Hanabila, according to the official opinion of the Hanabila. How strong is the dalil of the opinion that 3 washings must be carried out, which is the opinion of Ibn Qudama? It's one riwayah of Imam Ahmad. Ibn Qudama chose in Umdat Al-Fiqh. It's stronger than the 7, and 1 wash being enough is even stronger, wallahu a'lam. Which Al-Insaf, mentions that it's the opinion of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and Shaykh Taqiyuddin, that's what they call him, and Al-Muwaffaq Ibn Qudama in Al-Mughni, but I haven't found it in Al-Mughni. I searched for it, and I still plan on searching for it, that 1 wash is enough. I have not come across it in Al-Mughni, but Ibn Muflih and Furu' and Al-Mardawi and Al-Insaf mentioned that it's the opinion of Ibn Qudama in Al-Mughni. What's the ikhtiyar of Shaykh al-Islam when it comes to the issue of water being more or less than 2 qullas? Okay, let me explain to you in summary the opinion of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. He says water is only tahur and najis. There's no such thing as tahir. If you use water for wudu, if water changes due to lemons, as long as it's cold water, it's tahur. And that's the second riwayah of Imam Ahmad in both of those cases. And all the scenarios we mentioned, he considered those 4 tahur. So there's only tahur water. As for najis, he says najis is only, water becomes najis only if it changes, whether it's a lot or a little. And that's a second riwayah of Imam Ahmad and the opinion of Imam Malik. Then he says that anything can be used to clean najasa. It doesn't have to be water. And he says there's no condition of the number of times to use water for the removal of najasa. And basically his opinions are the pretty much the easiest and most practical for a lot of people, and it's very strong, to be honest. But that's his outlook in the chapter of water in general. So it's only tahur and najis. Any water that's not changed due to najasa is tahur. Any water that changed due to najasa is najis. And you can clean water in any way as long as the najasa gets removed, the color, taste, and smell. So he does not look into any of these details. But obviously, this you would learn after learning all of these details because uh, you basically have to know all these details before coming to such a conclusion. Otherwise, you have nothing to basically to study in detail. Just tahur and najis, and only if it changes it's najis. But that's Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah's views in general regarding this. Is soapy water or clean water where only soap has been added regarded as tahur or tahir? Yeah, if it's a significant amount of soap that's been added, it would be tahir and not tahur, especially if it becomes kind of slimy water. But if it's just a little bit of soap, it's not even detergent, just normal hand soap that comes into the water and it's not a major change, that would be tahur. If it's significant change, it would be tahir. Can a stain from a woman's monthly period class as najasa that will require washing 7 times before washing in the washing machine? Yeah, definitely. That would be blood that's najis. All human blood's najis, and especially and definitely woman's period blood would be najis. It should be washed 7 times, uh, according to the Hanabila. Even if the color is hard to remove, they say that's forgiven. If the color or the smell is difficult to remove, that's forgiven after washing it 7 times. So basically, do your best to remove the color and the smell. But if it doesn't, then this is forgiven. Then you can put it in the washing machine for the detergent to do the rest of the work if you wish. بارك الله فيكم جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك الله بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.